Given that I'm about ready to review a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I think it's fitting that I'm wearing my new Beauty and the Beast t-shirt, which says, "No thanks, my weekend is all booked," courtesy of my sister. She brought me home. This is a surprise, and can I just say she has impeccable taste. Hello everyone, it is Samantha and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day so far. Today I'm here with a book review and I'm going to be reviewing A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So, let's dive into this book of which I have many complicated feelings, shall we? A Court of Thorns and Roses is loosely based on the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. There are definitely many elements that harken back to the original tale, but this world in which this takes place is actually more of a fae story. This world is divided into two separate worlds, so you have your fae world and you have the human world, and there's this invisible wall, a barrier separating the two worlds. This wall was built after a war in which the humans fought for their freedom from the fae, who were basically enslaving them. So about 500 or so years have passed since this war occurred, and the humans now have a deep-seated hatred of the fae. And of course, Farah is no exception to this. Her family, which was once one of the nobility, lost all of their money, and now they're basically having to live based upon her hunting skills and handouts. And it is on one such day in which she's out in the woods hunting that she kills this massive wolf, who turns out later to be a fae. Now, there are repercussions for killing a fae, and so soon this fae warrior shows up at their house and basically says that, "Oh, you killed this fae warrior, so now your life is forfeit. I have to take you. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it." So he takes her away from her home and brings her to his lands. It turns out that he is actually one of the high fae, and he basically is the ruler of the spring court. The fae world is broken into various courts: spring court, summer court, dawn court, night court, etc. So this is really when Farah's story takes off. She starts to learn more about the fae world. She starts to learn more about this mysterious blight that is affecting the various courts, including the spring court. And she starts to learn more about her captor. And this is kind of when the story really starts to take off and the story starts to develop. She discovers what this blight is and what her role is in this world. So that's the basic plot of the book without giving too much away. At this point now, I want to kind of dive into my thoughts in the book and some of my feelings regarding the book. I'll try to keep it mainly spoiler-free. If there are any spoilers, which I'm hoping I shouldn't really get into, I will let you know beforehand. So I had kind of mixed feelings with this book in general. In terms of my own personal enjoyment, I found myself really enjoying reading this book. Like, it's definitely not the best written book I've ever read, which I encounter quite a bit with Sarah J. Maas's writing. But for whatever reason, I was enjoying the story, and there were definitely some problematic elements that I'll get into later, but I don't know, I found myself enjoying it. So in terms of enjoyment factor and just kind of reading a light, fluffy book, I definitely enjoyed it, and I got through it in less than a week, which for me lately is pretty dang good for finishing a book. So the plot itself I did end up kind of enjoying. I like the overall premise of the story. I like the fairy tale elements that she was kind of pulling from, as well as some various fairy story elements, like such as with the fae. I liked kind of the take on the Beauty and the Beast retelling, you know, the young girl being held captive and falling in love with the prince, of course, and then, you know, the blight or the curse, kind of like, you know, Beauty and the Beast, all of the people are turned into furniture. So I liked her take on it. I found the plot to be entertaining. I was fairly engrossed in the story, and it was definitely just kind of a very escapist book for me. But some of the things that I didn't much care for were her writing. Sarah J. Maas's writing just is not the best at all. She's a little bit too verbose when she doesn't need to be. She uses a lot of unnecessary words, or she uses many words when she could have just used one word to explain the same thing. Her writing in general can be a little bit jarring. Sometimes I found myself feeling jarred from one paragraph to the next, like I felt like I had missed a paragraph in between. Just the way that she transitions her sentences and her paragraphs wasn't handled the best, and just wasn't the most smoothest writing. That's what I'm trying to get at. Her writing wasn't very smooth. It didn't flow very well. It was just kind of jarring and haphazard. The next thing I didn't much care for, really, was the way that she drew her characters. I found Farah as the main character to be kind of a frustrating and slightly annoying character at times. She definitely was dense, that was for sure. Like, there was a lot of things that were super obvious. Like, at some point there's a riddle. I got the answer to the riddle in like the first time I read it, and I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. How can you not see the answer? So there's stuff like that that would frustrate me, plus people would tell her not to do stuff and she would go and do them even though she knew it was stupid to do it, and she just basically wasn't thinking things through. But then there was an inconsistency with her character where towards the end of the book suddenly she has these abilities to use logic that she didn't basically show earlier in the books. I felt like she was kind of an inconstant character. The next thing I didn't much care for was the romance in the book. I don't usually mind some romance in my book. I don't like let's have sex every 5 pages kind of a thing, which really was happening in this book. From the way that people presented this story, I was actually expecting these characters to be having sex like every 3 seconds, and that was not what happened. But when these romantic encounters did occur, I found them to be problematic because the way that the men were treating the woman really bothered me. Like, it was very much like, you're responsible for what I'm going to do, which is not okay. I'm sorry, sir, you need to be in control of your own actions. This is a little bit of a spoilery point. I will put the book down when the spoiler section is over, I guess. But one particular point in the book when when the High Lord, our main character, when the High Lord Tamlin, the one that she's falling in love with, he is performing the spring ritual, and basically he's like this bestial form, and he has like all this lust and stuff, and he tells her like, you need to go to your room because I can't be held responsible for what I'm going to do to you. And I'm like, really? Really? And then he ended up cornering her in the hall, but then she was like not okay with it, but then she was okay with it. I don't know. I just didn't much care for that at all. I didn't like how it was handled. I felt like it could have been handled a lot better. And I just hate it when people blame their actions on other characters. It's not her fault if you're being a perv and a jackass. Sorry, buddy. You need to control your own actions. I don't care if you're performing a high fae ritual or not. Just no. So I didn't much care for that encounter, and I also didn't much care for the later character, Rhysand. He was also very problematic, especially in the way he was treating women like things as possessions, and basically fairy version of roofing, however you say that, where you're basically spiking somebody's drink. That was like not cool. Okay, so there's a lot of problematic elements centered around the romance in this book that I had a problem with. I did hear that book 2 gets better about this in terms of the romance and just kind of the problems with it. So I'm looking forward to see if that is the case and if she kind of corrected what she did in this book. But that was probably my biggest issue with this book and why I didn't enjoy it. And just a lot of the side characters, I didn't find that enjoyable. Like, I'm not super into Tamlin as the main romantic figure. And Rhysand, same thing, although I did actually prefer Rhysand more than Tamlin, even though he's an incredibly more problematic character than Tamlin is. And then a lot of the side characters I did like, we didn't get enough of. Like, I really kind of enjoyed seeing Feyre's sisters and how they were so different, but how they're all kind of struggling and how they were handling that situation differently. And so I would love to see more of her sisters, but we didn't get enough of that. And even some of the other side fays, such as Alice and some of the others, I would love to see more of that. I felt like we had a little bit too much of Feyre. I think this book actually would have almost benefited from having multiple character perspectives, honestly. So that kind of sums up how I felt about the book, what I liked and what I didn't like. In terms of my rating breakdown, I would give the plot overall 3 stars. It was a kind of an enjoyable plot. I felt like it kind of took the Beauty and the Beast tale and kind of made it something new and fresh, which I enjoyed. I think it could have been done better, but I still enjoyed it, which is why I gave it 3 stars and not anything higher. The writing I gave 2.5 out of 5 stars. I just find Sarah J. Maas's writing to be subpar. I just don't think she's the best writer on earth by any stretch of the imagination. The characters I would give 2.5 out of 5 stars as well, for the reasons I noted earlier in this video. I just didn't find a lot of the main characters to be that enjoyable. I found a lot of the side characters to be more enjoyable, and we just didn't get enough of them. I also felt like the main villain just kind of, I don't know, I wasn't convinced with her motivation. She just felt like she was evil to be evil to me. I understood, you know, why she was doing what she was doing to the humans, but I just wasn't fully convinced, I guess. The world in which this took place, I would give 3 stars. It was a very fascinating world, but I felt like she could have described it better. I felt like we could have had more detail on its history and just kind of even its general appearance. We got a very big picture of what the spring court looks like, but really nothing else. And so I would definitely, I'm hoping and looking forward to the fact that hopefully she will expand upon the world in the future books and we can learn more about the history of the world. I like a lot of detail in my books. I'm the type of person that likes more slower paced, detail-oriented fantasy stories. So the lack of detail was something that was kind of jarring to me. But in terms of my overall enjoyment, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This book did have problems, but I still found myself enjoying the read and kind of being engrossed in the story enough to just kind of binge read the book, which doesn't happen for me too often. So in terms of my overall enjoyment, I rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So overall, I rated this book 2.5 out of 5 stars, 2.5, 3 stars, but I'm more inclined to say 2.5 out of 5 stars. It definitely has some problems that could have been worked on. I think that it could have been edited down to a shorter length. I think there was some unnecessary filler in the book. Some of the characters are very problematic, as I mentioned, but it definitely held a lot of promise, even if it didn't fully execute on that promise. All right, guys, that is basically it for my review of A Court of Thorns and Roses. I hope this kind of gave you an idea of what I thought of the book. I am definitely looking forward to reading book 2, especially since it's part of the BookTube SFF Awards and kind of seeing if it will improve upon this one. I have heard it does, so I'm looking forward to seeing if that's the case. I would love to hear what you guys think about this book, so let me know down below. That is it for today's video, so thank you guys so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Until next time, happy reading. Bye! You know, I ad-lib my reviews in case anybody didn't know that, and today I was just tongue-tied. I should probably get better about writing out my thoughts before speaking them into the camera.